Time for Wednesday's hour number 2 on hashtag Daily K with your host, Peter Bint. Korean dramas, movies, and even lyrics. Why is the world paying attention to Korean stories?
From classics to modern masterpieces, time to dig deep into the charms of Korean literature.
On Check It Out
with Paul.
It's a Wednesday, jump day, pump day, hump day. Wouldn't miss it for the world day for me, as I'm remembering now. I'm like having a bit of deja vu nostalgia / I was here last Wednesday. That was the last day I was in the studio.
It was.
Before I was confirmed with COVID. And I'm back to greet you again, Paul.
Lucky for me, you didn't give it to me.
It was very lucky indeed, because I was talking about it on the show. I was totally open with it. I wasn't feeling the best.
No, we were joking about it in the song break. So he's coughing a bit today, isn't he? And, well, yeah.
Yeah, it turned out that it was COVID, because I had tests from Sunday every day. And then on that Wednesday after the show, I went to the doctors and I was like, I've had the test, but I'm still feeling bad. And, you know, one of the people I met had COVID, so I'm very worried. And the doctor was like, all right, we're not meant to, but I'm going to shove this down your throat instead of down your nose with the test. And it was horrible. Like, he was really thorough. He had it in there for a good 10 seconds, making me gag. And then there was a faint line on the test, and he was like, that's enough to confirm it.
Oh, dear.
Stay at home. So thank you so much, Paul, for covering on the show over the weekend, yesterday, and your birthday as well.
I loved it. I was very happy to have a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be King Peter. But I'm very happy you're back as well.
Absolutely. The listeners loved it, though, and they said they hope that you're back in the future, either as my replacement or somebody else's. They said you deserve your own show.
I will take any show.
Any of them.
Don't care. Any time slot. I'll take 3 a.m. if necessary.
Paul is not fussy. We're going to get on to today's book, which we previewed, and we will preview next week's book at the end of today's show, so you can read it in advance. If you have done, let us know what you thought. It's by Kim Young-ha, we mentioned last week as well, right?
Yeah, we're doing Black Flower, Gomengot, by Kim Young-ha, translated by Charles Le Shure. We're travelling back in time today, more than 100 years, to witness the trials and tribulations of a group of just over 1,000 Koreans who sailed across the Pacific to start a new life in Mexico.
What an interesting story that is. We actually talked about there being a Korean festival in Mexico, and I believe it is the area which a lot of the Korean early settlers, I don't know if this is fictional or not, or based on something that was true, originally settled in Mexico.
Well, we'll talk about whether it's fictional or not a little bit later. But it is a big, epic historical adventure. There's heartbreak. There's a whole host of interesting characters who find themselves in an incredibly harsh environment. There's going to be danger. There's going to be death. There's going to be romance. There's going to be fighting. There's going to be much, much more.
I'm really looking forward to this. I've been doing a lot of looking into history for work reasons recently.
Yes.
And thinking about those conditions. You know, now we can get plane in relative comfort, apart from certain economy classes on certain airlines. But back in the day, you would be on a boat for weeks or months,
exactly,
not knowing whether you were going to survive. Like, that was part of the adventure, so to speak.
Yeah, less of an adventure, more of a trauma.
I think so. The author, Kim, we have featured numerous times.
Yeah, we have. This is our 5th time featuring him. I think we've done almost all his translated works. Your Republic is Calling You was the last one we did. Diary of a Murderer, I Hear Your Voice, and I Have the Right to Destroy Myself. I love Kim Young-ha. This book is a little bit different. We'll get into that. But I highly recommend his other works. He was born in Hwacheon in Gangwon-do province. He studied at Yonsei University and started writing fiction. And he published his first short story in 1995. His first novel, which was I Have the Right to Destroy Myself in 1996, which won him the New Writers Award from Munhak Dongnae. And, well, he's continued to write, he's taught, he's hosted radio shows, and he also translates novels from English into Korean. He is amazing. He's been translated into more than a dozen languages. He's written 7 novels, 5 short story collections. He's won pretty much every major Korean literature award. I recommend his books always. If you have a chance to read Kim Young-ha, you're going to be in for a good time.
Fantastic. We've shown you the book covers in the Korean original version, the translated version as well. You can find it on the internet to purchase. I'm assuming this is not a freebie one.
No, this is a full-on, big, thick novel.
Okie dokie. The translator, interesting name, Charles Shure, doesn't ring a bell for me.
We did him earlier this year.
Sorry, Charles. Buddy.
We did a short story by him earlier this year.
One of those COVID after effects. You forget the names of translators, apparently.
It's our second time featuring him. He studied English literature at the State University of New York in the 90s, headed to Korea where he got his MA and PhD from Seoul National University, and he taught translation at the Hanguk University of Foreign Studies, became associate professor at SNU. He hasn't had a lot of translations published. I think this is his only full-length novel translation, but very glad to have him on board.
Fantastic. So we'll get to our first reading, guys. This is what we like to do with some background music. If this is your first time listening, set the scene for us.
Okay. We're on the boat. They're coming to the end of their long voyage across the Pacific Ocean. A beggar boy and a young princess have a connection. It should be impossible that they could ever have a romantic entanglement.
Ooh.
And yet... And yet, and yet.
Oh, let's take it away.
Ijung said, I'm a wandering merchant and a lowly orphan, but in Mexico, where we will soon arrive, none of that will matter. Somehow I will earn money and I will find you and marry you. Please, wait for me. Yeonsu laughed weakly as she lay there. She was not laughing at him, yet laughter came out. You could be killed. Though we may be dressed in filthy clothes and eat and live like pigs here, my family is royalty, and my father is a blood relative of His Majesty. He's not one of those ruined aristocrats who do not have money for a proper hat. If it weren't for the wiles of Lee Hae-in, my father might have ascended the throne. Such a person would never accept anyone as my husband, not just you. Ijung spoke. Do you really think the distinction between high and low, old and young, and man and woman will be as severe as it is in Korea? Look at this ship we're on. Aristocrat or commoner all must line up to eat. Ijung pointed above his head. In the eyes of those Westerners above us, we are all just the same. Koreans. They only count our heads and they do not care about our family registers. There is no one on this ship who could stand side by side with you anyway. Ijung held Yeonsu. The smell of roe deer blood washed over him. She did not argue. Her own foreboding was not that different. Life there will be vastly different from Korea. I will go to church and to school. I will earn money with my own hands. I will be a woman who will rely on no one. When that time comes, my mother and father will have no hold on me. The two young people came together once again. In every way, it was easier than the first time. This time they took all their clothes off and held each other. A rotten potato that was rolling around on the floor was crushed beneath their bodies.
We've got lots of messages coming in. Sherry from Canada saying, it's a strangely liberating feeling, I think, knowing that no one knows your backstory. Possibly a lonely feeling too, but a chance to be whoever you want.
It is true. I mean, both Peter and I have started lives in new countries.
Yes.
You grew up in the UK, so did I. We came to Korea. A little different for you because you have family here.
Sure.
But yeah, for me it was like, oh. But I've done it several times in my life.
Did you create a new story? Or at least like a new edge to your character or something, wherever you went?
My name's actually Steve, but I don't tell anyone. I've got Siska saying, oh, I don't have this book yet. Only have Diary of a Murderer and I Have the Right to Destroy Myself. Oh, Siska, well, maybe you need to add this to your collection. And Leon is saying, is there a Korean version of the movie Titanic with the different social classes and falling in love?
Oh.
It's a little bit like this. Spoiler warning, the boat doesn't sink, though.
Okie dokie. And it's not all on the boat?
No, the first quarter of the book is on the boat.
Oh, okay, so a big chunk dedicated to the journey itself.
Exactly, yes.
Does it start off in Korea then with like the people leaving the peninsula itself.
Yeah, I'm going to read the message first, Peter.
All right.
Get your sunso in order.
Sherry Russell says, oh, snap, the story is getting dramatic already.
And a little bit saucy.
Indeed, a rotten potato. Benedict says, lovely read, and the scene sounds so dramatic as well. And Tropic Girl K saying, they're so different, but as they say, maybe opposites attract.
Indeed.
In Korea, they never, like you said, would have been able to have even crossed paths, I don't think, these characters, right?
No, but will they again?
And is this their story then, this novel?
Look, it's at the heart of the book, but it's not the only story. There's so many people to meet, so many lives that are documented. And I've got to say, I've got to skip a lot because it's an epic novel.
Oh.
So there's a lot in here that I'm not going to talk about, so it is worth reading. The first quarter of the book introduces us to all these characters, and they're all trying to leave Korea to start a new life elsewhere. So it's 1905. This is just before Japan is going to take full control of Korea.
Okay.
And they're at the port of Jeolpo. There's this young beggar, Lee-jung, who we heard in the reading. He's looking to start his new life. There's the princess, Yeon-soo, who's fleeing with her family, fearing of Japan. There's a soldier, Jo Jang-yoon, a thief, Chae Sung-gil, a priest, Father Paul Park Kwang-soo, and an interpreter, Gwong Young-jun, among others.
Ooh, lots of characters.
Yeah, so it's from the from the poorest to the richest, and they're all crowding aboard this ship. It's not a passenger ship, it's a cargo ship, the Ilford. They've been promised a new life in Mexico. And it's a long and painful journey. There's illness, there's death.
Oh, dear.
Lee-jung and Yeon-soo meet on the boat. There's this spark between them. And then we get that passionate moment as they almost reach Mexico, which I featured in that first excerpt. They arrive, and they are shocked by what they find.
Oh, what?
Korea is a country of mountains and rivers. They're taken to the Yucatan, which is just an endless scorched plain.
Oh, no, not the greatest place to settle down then.
No, very different to Korea. And they're sold off to work at haciendas, these plantations. They're going to have to work almost like slaves for 4 years to pay off their debts.
Oh, dear. I wonder if they knew this.
They didn't realize it was going to be like this.
Okay.
So some of them, like the interpreter Gwon, can profit from, he speaks English, he's learning Spanish. The rest of them are treated like dogs. They're whipped. They're forced to sleep in huts with dirt floors. They have very little to eat. Yeon-soo's father, the royal family member,
together.
the whole family is there.
Okay.
He refuses to work, and so his whole family have to basically base themselves and get to work to look after him. Lee-jung is sent to a different hacienda, but he is determined to find Yeon-soo. And there's a moment where some of his fellow comrades, the guys he's sleeping in the same hut with, are accused of murder. And so he's like, okay, I've got to get out of here. And he bribes the overseer to send them to another hacienda. And it turns out to be the one where Yeon-soo is living.
Hooray!
But the interpreter Gwon has taken a shine to Yeon-soo. And he, through her younger brother, tries to get her to be his concubine.
Oh.
And so Lee-jung and Yeon-soo are reunited, but they're quickly torn apart because Gwon sees what's happening. He's like, I'm not having this. And he sells Lee-jung onto another hacienda.
Oh, no.
Meanwhile, at another hacienda,
Yeah.
we have these other characters like Father Paul, who's given up his Catholic faith, Chae Sung-gil, the thief, who's starting to become a Catholic, and a shaman. And the head of the hacienda is a full-on Catholic, and he wants every single Korean to convert, to become Catholic. And so when the shaman ends up performing the ceremony to heal a sick comrade, he gets beaten and beaten and beaten for worshipping another god. And the Koreans rise up and they attack.
Fantastic. Let's take up the second reading there.
We came to this place because we were hungry, not because we wanted to become the dogs of some mad hacendado. He is mad for religion and starving for blood. Let us go and teach him a lesson. People armed themselves with machetes and stones. The overseers who had approached on their horses figured out what was going on and fled. Now everyone gathered, including the women and children, and ran first to the storehouse where the shaman was. When stones flew and the storehouse windows broke, those who had been guarding the building fled. The men thrust open the doors and ran in. The shaman was asleep, still in chains. When they woke him up, he stared at them in wonder. His face was empty, as if he had no idea what had happened. His naked body, striped with wounds like snakes, looked like a captured wild boar. The crowd grew aggressive. Like a genie released from its lamp, they sought a victim. "Let's beat those overseers to death!" someone shouted. They went to an overseer's house nearby. Dozens of stones rained down noisily, breaking the windows. Joaquin, infamous as an evil overseer, more hot-tempered and rough than any of the others, though merely 20 years old, boarded up the doors and windows and stayed inside his house. As the baptism of stones continued, he was seized by a fear that he dared not even breathe loudly. He might have a gun, someone said, but the fear this conjured up only stoked the men's belligerence. To hide the fact they were scared, the men attacked Joaquin's brick house like fiends.
Wow, like a slave or worker uprising.
Yes.
You can really feel the intensity of this situation as well. So, do they succeed? Do they take over? Do they kill people?
Nah.
No.
It's hopeless.
Oh, no.
They have this one moment, but the point is they have no legal recourse.
Oh, I see.
They're bound to their contract, and they're in the middle of nowhere near any other cities or towns. And the person who should help them, the interpreter Guan, he only helps himself. He doesn't care about anyone else.
Selfish.
And Father Paul completely loses his faith. And in time, he actually becomes a shaman himself. And we learn about his history, how he was kidnapped by a shamaness when he was a kid.
How interesting.
Yes. Months pass. Yunsu, the princess, realizes she is pregnant. Ijung is the father.
Okay.
But she doesn't know what to do. So she makes a deal with Guan and becomes his concubine. And her family shuns her. And she raises the baby with Guan and his other mistress, a Mayan named Maria. And 3 years later...
3 years later? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep up, it's an epic
Yes.
novel. We're going over years.
Yeah.
She eventually manages to leave with Guan, who has plans to return to Korea, but she tricks him. She leaves her baby behind, they go to the city, to a hotel, and when he's drunk and snoozing in bed, she steals his clothes and escapes.
Oh.
But she herself gets attacked and is sold to a Chinese restaurant owner.
Oh, my goodness.
Ijung, meanwhile, has escaped from the hacienda he's been sent to. He has plans to cross the border to the US, but never manages to.
Oh.
And then 4 years are up. Their contracts are done, and the Koreans are free to start their lives in Mexico properly.
Oh, so that is done. That is honoured.
Yeah,
fairly.
that is honoured. It's a contract, so they've suffered through it. But none of them have any hopes of returning to Korea.
No.
Jo Jang-yun, the soldier, sets up a military school. And then one of the ex-soldiers, a very quiet one known as the Stone Buddha named Park Jong-hyun, goes into the city and becomes a barber.
Interesting.
He trains up and that's going to be his job. And one day he goes to a Chinese restaurant and there he sees Yunsu.
Oh, still working there?
Yeah, and so he resolves to borrow money from his boss and he pays her debt so she can leave.
Oh, that's nice of him.
And they settle down together.
Oh.
And they even go and find her son at the hacienda and buy him out of slavery.
Oh, dear.
Ijung, on the other hand, he's fallen in with a bunch of revolutionaries. And Bak, who finds himself cutting the hair of the opposition, a general, is volunteered by the general into his own personal army.
Oh, well, these aren't Korean groups.
These are
Mexican. Okay.
Mexicans. And so the two even meet in battle. They don't shoot at each other, though.
Okay.
And after everything is done, Ijung's side loses. He comes to visit Park's barbershop, and they talk.
This does sound rather epic, doesn't it? We'll get to the final reading in part 3.
Welcome to Arirang Radio.
If you are in Jeju,
88.7 in Jeju City.
88.1 in Seogwipo City.
101.9 in the Daejeong area.
Arirang Radio.
The scissors snipped thin air. Jose stole a glance at Park Jun-hun's scissors. It was the glance of a skilled barber. Then Park Jun-hun suddenly spoke in Korean. Which side were you on? Via's side. Many died. It is always like that in war. They say that they are hunting down Villa's people these days. Who knows when the situation might change again, Ijung said. So why were you on Obregon's side? He came here and took me with him. Is that all? Park Jung-hun stopped cutting and lathered Lee-jung's face. I have no interest in those sort of things. I just want to live here quietly with my wife and child. What about you? Did you really follow Via because you liked him? Yes, I was hot-blooded. Park Jung-hun held the razor blade to Lee-jung's left cheek and gently brought it upward. And now? Lee-jung hesitated for a moment. In truth, I still am. Park Jung-hun pointed to the child playing outside. He is your son. But if it's okay with you, well, no, even if it's not okay with you, there isn't much choice. I would like to raise him until your blood cools. The razor blade passed beneath his ear. I will not take him with me. I am in no position to raise a child. If you're not going to take him with you, it would be better if you left now. Lee-jung raised an eyebrow. His mother will be returning shortly. Park Jung-hun stopped shaving and brushed bits of hair from Lee-jung's neck. Lee-jung tried to pay him, but Obregon's barber would not accept the money. I will raise the child well. If something should happen with General Obregon and something happens to me, please take care of my wife and the child. And take care of yourself. No matter what we might do, this is a revolution of a nation not our own. Whichever way it may go, it is best to leave it up to them.
Oh, so I forgot you told us that Jong-hun had got together with Yeon-soo.
Yeah, keep up.
And Lee-jung had a child with Yeon-soo.
Yeah, keep up.
This child is both their child in a way. Jong-hun's raising it though.
Yeah.
Raising him. I thought he was going to use the razor blade to maybe finish him off or something.
Peter, it's not that kind of book.
Okay.
Though that said, Kim Young-ha's other novels are a bit like that.
Fantastic. Got lots of messages coming in. Tropic OK saying, interesting development. Maybe they respect each other and I guess they both love the same woman. Yeah, so it seems like Lee Jong has not gone out of his way to try and get Yeon-soo back or anything like that.
No, it feels like that moment has passed. Cherry Russell saying, I can't wait to hear what happens next. Shocked face, shocked face, shocked face.
Wow.
Sarah Louise Wash, I like this book already. Isn't this like slavery? And OMG, what about the baby? Well, we know he's safe. The baby is safe. And Stacey says, this gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, Shelley's saying this story has taken a heck of a dark turn. The excitement, though, I could picture this in my mind. Yeah, I've never been to Mexico, but I'm assuming it's like some of the cowboy films I watched when I was younger, those kind of desert plains and whatnot. And then just randomly having these Korean characters there. It's really interesting. I reckon it would make quite an entertaining movie, maybe along the lines of that, what was it, The Good, the Bad and the Weird, that film, like a cowboy Korean movie.
Or even a series.
Yeah, because it's very long. The book itself is long.
It's a long book. It's a big book. It's a big fat book.
So this is where it ends?
No.
Oh, it keeps on going?
No, but the relationship between Lee-jung and Yeon-soo is over. He ends up alone. And then we get the third part of the book, and we learn of his fate, and we also learn of the fate of a group of Korean soldiers who try to start a new nation they call New Korea in the jungles of Guatemala. Wow. And we also find out what happens to all the other characters in the book. And I'm not going to spoil it for you. You're going to have to read it yourself if you want to find out what happens. What I can tell you, the really interesting thing is, this is based on a true story.
Oh, how true?
Well, not the characters themselves.
Okay.
But Kim did the research and actually went to Mexico to learn about the just over 1,000 Koreans who did actually settle there.
Wow.
And some of their descendants are still living there.
Yeah, they're like I said, there's apparently a big community who have been there since about 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about the Korean festival that was taking place. And I was so intrigued. I was like, how on earth did these people get there? It seems rather random that they went there. Like, it wasn't that they chose this land in particular.
What you have to understand, at the time, basically, there were companies that were taking advantage of innocent people. So, for example, Koreans got sent to Hawaii to work on plantations there. They got sent to Mexico and other places. and they didn't know what they were getting into. And some of them were treated better than others, and some of them died, and some of them survived. But yeah, there's a whole heap of history that we're not aware of, and it's books like this that really sort of enlighten us, that shine a spotlight in these moments.
Yeah, with the fictional aspect to the story making you interested kind of naturally rather than shoving it down your throat. I was not aware of that backstory, that origin, that they were forced to work as slaves almost in these kind of contract terms.
Exactly. And what you have to understand as well is that on these haciendas, some of the hacendados were kinder than others.
Okay.
So it features some places where they're not whipped.
Yeah.
There features some places where they have enough food, other places where they get a certain amount of money for the work that they do each day, and it's not enough for a family to survive. So we see all these different circumstances that the Koreans are treated in, and it's really interesting. What's also really interesting is last year, the book finally was translated into Spanish and published in Mexico.
Oh, I'm sure there will be an appetite to find out more about this story. I wonder how well it's known, because it's not too many Koreans, not a massive community.
No, it's not. So it's great that Kim Young-ha decided to take a break from his sort of darker psychological novels and write this historical epic.
It's very random compared to the other stories, right?
Yeah, but the great thing is it's been translated into English, into Spanish, into French, into German, Japanese, and Polish.
Wow.
Kim Young-ha said he's very proud of it. And when it was published last year in Mexico, he said he hoped there would be more chances for Korea and Mexico to connect through literature in the future. So it's a bit of a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested in reading all the other stories of those Koreans who decided to start new lives elsewhere.
Absolutely. And even that community in Mexico, I'm sure that everyone who went originally is long dead, but their ancestors, like what they know about their grandmas and grandfathers and whatnot, and how they now assimilate into that Mexican culture, how Korean they still feel, perhaps, and things like that. Really interesting. Marilyn saying, what is the title of the book? I missed it while in a meeting. This is my kind of story, I think.
It's called Black Flower. It's by Kim Young-ha and translated by Charles Le Shure. If you like historical epics, if you like these big sweeping stories, if you like a little romance and also a little danger, then this may well be up your street.
Marilyn also saying, does anyone know whether the K-drama Mr. Sunshine is based on some facts? I'm pretty sure, like, again, the situation is maybe factual in that happened at the Japanese colonial time. I think that's where it's based, but I don't know how true the characters are. Maybe similar to this.
Yeah, I think generally with these big sort of historical dramas, the situation is correct. The situation is right, but the actual story itself is fiction.
Absolutely. Tropical saying, it takes guts to migrate, but most of us have ancestors who did, maybe boarded up boats and headed across the seas into the unknown. And yeah, I was learning a bit more, again, for a history program about the slave trade and things like that. In that case, there were a lot of people who were forced onto boats against their will. At least that isn't the case here. There were maybe, I don't know if it's better,
they were tricked into the situation, though they did want to leave. So it's all part of this sort of tangled world history of the past couple of hundred years.
Yeah.
But it's great that we have authors and translators who are committed to sharing the stories of others in this way.
Absolutely. Paul, thank you for a very interesting read this week.
Thank you. It's lovely to have you back. Thanks as always to the Literature Translation Institute of Korea for the help with copyright permission for this broadcast. Thank you to Kim Young-ha for his epic story and to Charles Le Shure for his translation. Next week, the book I will be covering is The Old Woman with the Knife.
Oh,
yes.
interesting title.
It's written by Gu Byung-mo. It's translated by Chi-young Kim. I'll say that title one more time for you. The Old Woman with the Knife. I'll be back next week.
Hopefully without a knife in the studio. Thank you very much. Ouch! You can listen to Check It Out with Paul Matthews on Arirang Radio's #DailyK every Wednesday from 10 a.m. KST.